All right, welcome guys. This is the first ever session we're doing together. I don't really know how this will work out, but essentially the idea is we get together every week with someone new or someone familiar and talk about CRO, and those topics could be varied. This podcast is to shed light in the industry, on the trends and on the topics on the top of every CRO's mind. Joining me in this session is Chad Sanderson from Subway. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
Well, you're here for the first time and hopefully for the next few sessions at the least. Why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners so that they know who you are and what you do?
Sure. Okay, well, my name is Chad Sanderson. My official title is the Personalization Manager at Subway Restaurants. Subway is kind of a unique business. They're usually not who you think about when it comes to conversion optimization. But they do sell, and I can't give the exact numbers, but they do sell thousands and thousands of sandwiches online every single day through their remote ordering platforms. And so they need a team to optimize, to test, to conduct user research for all their digital properties, which right now are a desktop website, a mobile website, and also a tablet and a kiosk. So that's my experience. My background is more on the mathematical side. I used to be a journalist and a graphic designer. So it's been kind of an interesting ride in optimization, but I think I have some interesting information to share, and I'm pretty excited to do it today.
It's quite a varied career there. A journalist, a mathematician, is that correct?
Yeah, I have a bit of a statistics background, that's right.
Okay, so just to give you a bit of, to the listeners and viewers listening to this, I've been watching Chad interact on LinkedIn and within the various Slack groups that he's part of, and serious man, the knowledge bombs you drop everywhere, it's amazing. And that's why I was really excited to have you on the show, because I think someone that is a practitioner, like doing this on a day-to-day basis and also really experienced is a rare thing to find. And the topic for this session, the way I thought we'd start off this session with is talking about the industry. Where are we right now? What are the trends you've seen, from watching people online, from the type of discussions that come up? I know I have my own set of experiences from the talks I gave last year, from the workshops I ran, and also with dealing with customers with effective experiments as well. A varied lot in the optimization industry, but let's get your take on it first.
Sure. I think that conversion optimization as a whole has come a really long way in a very short period of time. I think a big part of that is due to people like yourself and some of the other names in the industry that have been willing to actually be vocal about what we do. Interestingly enough, before I was kind of aware of sort of the larger online space, so the conversion optimization community, there were a lot of things that I didn't know. Like, I was a bit more on the scientific end, but then sort of hearing some of the best practices, and then also hearing about things that people had seen over years and years of experience. And sometimes it wasn't the best practices, it was like the unraveling of the best practices, which is, this is what you should do to not do a lot of the mistakes that people make. So I think that the proliferation of some of those ideas has reached a huge amount of people. I do interviews with quite a few optimization candidates, just kind of in the New York, Connecticut area. Mm-hmm. And I've seen the level of knowledge rise significantly very recently. People went from not being able to explain what a sample size even was to actually be able to have some type of formed opinion about it. It may not be the right opinion, but they still had an opinion, which is better than nothing. So I think it's definitely in a much better place than it used to be. Yeah. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done, because some of the programs that are investing in optimization right now, or personalization, they're so new to it and they don't really have good people to start from, that a lot of it is this sort of best practice, formulaic, let me go off the blog posts I see online.
Yeah.
And we both know how that goes in terms of results.
Definitely. I think just keep talking about that as well. I remember from days when I was consulting, the common thread I'd see with clients would be like, yeah, we know we've got all this work to do, but let's start with some quick wins, right? Let's start with some quick wins. And when we talk about quick wins, what do we try and do? Look at blog posts, right? And I know as you said, the industry has matured, but if you look at some of the blog posts that have been put out over there, like, going back 4 or 5 years ago, even from like renowned sort of testing vendors out there was a lot of bad stuff, right? And I think, as you said correctly, the industry has matured, because now when you look at that stuff, you cringe, right? What you said, there's still a lot of work to do. What is, in your opinion, what is that work, and where's the gap right now?
Oh, it's a great question. It's one of my favorite topics, actually. So I think probably the biggest gap right now is that well, first of all, let me take a step back and kind of give you my opinion on what conversion optimization is, because I think that's an important starting point.
Gotcha.
I think that conversion optimization is this blend. It's this intersection of art and science, and it's done in a way that we haven't really seen before in a lot of other industries. Usually you have people, if there's a dividing line that goes between art and science, then you have people that usually fall on either one side or the other. You've got your graphic designers, your copywriters, your web designers, and then you have the scientific side, which is usually very, very removed from that. So they operate in two very different dimensions, oftentimes. Data scientists, statisticians, and clinical psychologists, and all these different types of people. And optimization is really the combining of those two things. It's using the scientific methods. But the experiment design is based on creativity, and it's based on being able to design an experiment and use our sort of e-commerce knowledge and use our UX knowledge and things like that. So it's very new. It's not something that's been done before, that there's a lot of documentation on, that we can look back over 50 or 30 or however many years and say, okay, there's this very well structured library of resources that we can pull from. So all this stuff is completely brand new. And the people that gravitated at first towards optimization were usually marketers that came from another discipline, usually your PPC people, SEO people, sort of traditional marketing managers, designers. And so when those people came in, they're really experienced in that, that creative sector, that to the left side of the line, but they were missing out on that scientific component. Mm-hmm. And so I think now we're starting to see those elements of that scientific component kind of start to dribble in. And that's what I'm excited about, because that's what can really take testing and experimentation to the next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about stats recently, right? Some of the prominent people that I see keep being mentioned. Someone like, is it Georgiev, is it?
Yeah, Georgiev. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who's talking at CXL, or he ran a course at CXL, is that correct?
Yeah, he did a statistics course.
And I think that's become a highlight this year. But I also feel, and this is again from what I've noticed over the last year in Facebook groups, in the Slack channel, in workshops I ran and talks I gave, there is a thread of people chasing the next shiny syndrome, right? Was the shiny object syndrome, right? Chasing the next shiny object, whether that be personalization or whether that be machine learning and AI, right? I can see you cringing over that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's this trend where people have not figured out the basics yet, but they're going and trying to get these next level things in the hope that it will solve their problems almost on autopilot. Is there a danger there that businesses are investing in solutions before they've got their foundations right?
Oh yeah. I think we're both totally kind of on the same page when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I was actually having a talk with Matt Gershoff a couple days ago.
Conductrix, yeah.
From Conductrix, who's brilliant. He's got a PhD in artificial intelligence or something like that. Really extremely intelligent guy. Was doing a lot of this before it kind of became the mainstream, buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of complexity to any machine learning system or any AI system is just mind-boggling how complex it is.
Yeah.
But the way that it gets packaged oftentimes is exactly like you said, which is, all you got to do is plug some stuff in, yada, yada, yada. A monkey can do it, an animal, a dog. You really don't even need to be human to run A/B tests anymore.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it comes off. And it makes sense why, because when you're trying to sell a software or you're trying to sell a package, you can't tell people, oh man, this requires 3-4 years of stats knowledge, and you have to run experiments and have all this. You can't say that, because then no one's gonna buy it. So I think that's kind of where we are with a lot of things, exactly as you said, especially with personalization, some stuff like that. My title is personalization manager.
Right.
And one of the things that I see whenever the discussion of personalization comes up, oftentimes, even within my own company, is that the idea is something that's very easy. Okay, these people come in the morning, so we serve them content in the morning. These people come in the afternoon, so we serve them content that's designed for people coming in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know that works? How do you know your model is functioning properly? Like, there's all these sort of questions and sub-layers to it. But yeah, I think you're right on the button with that.
Yeah, I think if we rewind back to like about 5 or 6 years ago, some of the testing tools, again, not naming names here, were guilty of the same things, where they were trying to make A/B testing seem like this really easy process, which now, when we look at optimization, is actually more complex. It's more refined. But go back 5 or 6 years ago, and you're looking at these testing vendors saying you only need 100 conversions for statistical significance, or you can just run it till you hit significance. And then there's all this incorrect knowledge floating around. I think I still see some artifacts of that in people assuming that's the way it's done. And part of it is down to marketing spiel, because they have to sell the product. They have to make it sound like any idiot off the street can do it, right? And as you said, personalization and stuff like that is essentially packaged and promoted the same way. But the way, ultimately, if you're putting in rubbish or garbage into the system, you're getting garbage out, right? And yeah, personalization, as some sites would have it, you're working late, like a homepage that says working late if you come up in the middle of the night, or good morning if you come in during the day. Those are base level personalizations, but ultimately, like, what is it achieving? And how have you reached that point where you know that that's going to work for that segment, right? So let's segue a bit. Let's talk about stakeholders. That's the other common bugbear that I've been noticing. I mean, tell me if you can share, what's the situation like within Subway, the relationship with stakeholders, the relationship with other departments, and how they kind of bought into this optimization process. And then I'll tell you about the challenges that I've seen companies face as well.
Yeah. And I think that, I think there's definitely some common threads. I used to be a consultant as well, and some of the things that I used to see when working with other businesses was very similar to what I see within Subway. The first thing is that almost universally, and this is just in general,
sure,
but almost universally, people they want to believe.
Yeah.
Right. There's a desire to believe that what the optimization specialist is doing is effective, and that it's working. That's kind of like their starting point. Well, yeah, most people are like that. You do have a group of people. I've noticed that oftentimes they're in like IT or something, or they usually have some connection to whatever it is that you're experimenting on. It's their baby. They don't want it to change. Yeah. Those are the people that are kind of gonna. It's almost like a jury. It's like innocent until proven guilty. With them, it's guilty until proven. Sure. You actually have to prove that what you're doing is not breaking something.
Yeah.
So they want to believe, but we arrive at this interesting point where you want to believe in something, you want to believe it's working, but you're not necessarily willing, you don't really understand what it's going to take in order for real change to happen.
There
You
we go.
know?
I think you hit the nail on the head over there. And this is, you know, when this, as you say, the stakeholders or the business management don't really understand what a successful process looks like, or what a successful optimization test looks like, right? So how are they to judge whether it's, you know, done well or not done well, right?
Yeah. And one of the, you know, the way I kind of like to think of it in a lot of ways is at the start of the new year, everybody has these New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to be in shape. And those all sound really good in your head. And it sounds really good when you tell everybody else that you know, like, oh yeah, you know, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then actually going to the gym and lifting weights every single day is ridiculously hard. Like
Sure.
it's painful. It's not enjoyable. And that's what the optimization process is. Like it's painful. You have to question some preconceived notions you have about everything that you're doing correctly at the business. And some people are more open to doing that than others.
I remember there was this someone I knew in the industry that we met at a conference, and he was telling me this scenario, this thing that happened at his workplace, where he was the optimization manager. He came up with all these test ideas, this test plan, this roadmap, goes to the stakeholder, in this case, the CEO. It's a much smaller company. And everything gets written off immediately. And the CEO basically says, I know what to do. I'm going to go and run my own tests. Right. That is a losing battle. And I don't know whether this is a trend we're going to see more this year or less. But I feel, again, this is a theory that I have. As more and more companies that have started testing, you know, a year ago or 2 years ago, they're going to start hitting organizational problems this year. And that's a theory I have about why, you know, the fact that optimization has been brought into the company, but as a silo in itself. I don't know if you've experienced that as a consultant or within Subway. Why are we a silo if optimization affects every aspect of the business?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. And in fact, when I came to Subway, that was one of my main focuses when I arrived, is to unsilo not just optimization, but also digital marketing in general. Because in a lot of ways, especially when you have a big business, you've got all these different components of people that can contribute to test ideas.
Yeah.
And usually a lot better than people in digital, frankly. And reason is because if you're actually on the ground working with people, and you're working with someone who runs a store, or you're working with someone who's has a lot of FaceTime interaction with the customers, and then saying, hey, we're getting complaints about, you know, whatever it is on the website, like that's the guy that you want to talk to, because he's actually hearing the direct feedback. But anyway, so optimization, I feel, needs to be really shared with everybody, because it's a process that everybody can contribute to. And so the first thing that I wanted to do when I arrived at Subway, every business that I've consulted for, is democratize the process, get it in front of people, you know, let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. It's awesome. This is how you participate in it. And this is why it's a better process than what we've been doing up till now. It's not your fault, right? You weren't doing anything wrong, but as time goes on and we get new technology and we get better understanding of the world, then we evolve, we change our processes. And optimization is just another part of that, not just for marketing, but for the business as a whole. It really is the optimization of the whole business, and the digital side is a part of that. I think one of the worst experiences that I had when I was doing consulting was there was a company, and the poor there was this e-commerce manager. She was so nice and sweet and open and creative, and every idea that she brought to her management was basically, no, not going to happen. Yeah. You don't want to risk that. And what I always said to her was, just ask them if they're so happy with, if they're so sure of the way that they're doing things now, why are they even testing?
Yeah,
just keep doing it that way.
Yeah.
You know?
I see that. Yeah. And I don't know whether, like, I don't know who's to blame over here, because again, it's as an optimizer, you've said that you've gone in and, you know, the first thing you did was try and unsilo the place, try and democratize the sharing of knowledge, and getting people open and honest about, you know, feedback from customers, because ultimately you guys are all working towards the same goal. What's your, so when I ask other people, like, okay, have you done that? Have you spoken to stakeholders? I always feel that they're talking to the stakeholder rather than discussing. So they will go into a meeting and they will almost teach them what optimization is, rather than, you know, ultimately the stakeholders are not going to be doing optimization themselves, but they need to understand it from their point of view. So how it affects their KPIs, whether they're going to have to do more work, and ultimately change management, right? Because change management plays a big role. Like if you tell a customer service department tomorrow that they need to change the way they collect feedback and give feedback to you, that's a lot more work for them. How do you manage it? And what happens if they don't do it, right? All those different moving parts. What's your advice for people starting out? Like, how do they best get their stakeholders and other departments on board today? Like if they're starting out in a new company, in a new role.
Mm-hmm. I think that I think that the education piece is important, but I think that the education piece needs to be framed in a very particular way. Um, I think what most people do is what I saw when I was consulting as well, is that whenever we're onboarding a new client, there's always this sort of explanation of, you know, or the sales processes. This is optimization. This is what you need to do. This is how you best run a test. That's not really too relevant in my opinion. What's really relevant is explaining on a fundamental level why the process is important. And the idea is to get them thinking about where are the areas in what I do every day, not just related to optimization, but in speaking in generally, where are the areas that what I do every day can be made better with an experiment. If someone's in customer service, you know, the way that I try to get people to think is, okay, we're going to invest in, I don't know, new phones or something, right? We're going to bring in new phones. Mm-hmm. But why? Like, why are we bringing, are we bringing in new phones because it's going to improve the quality of our service? Is it to lift the employee satisfaction within our own company? Like, is there what is the benefit? And then once we implement that change, even though it seems like a really small, minor thing, you're still spending money, right? Yeah. Every phone, let's say it costs $100 and you have 50 people. Mm-hmm. And that's a sizable investment, and you want to make sure you're getting ROI for it. So if you're like the customer service manager and you're the one that has to sign off on a budget in that situation, you should start to think about, how can I justify this expenditure? How can I justify all of these things that we're doing? Yeah. And so that's what I think the learning should really be focused around, because it's a significant departure in the thinking than what people are used to. That, like, I'm really experienced, so I'm going to be the one who makes the decision because I know what's best. Yeah. And once that takes place, then the next thing I usually recommend people do is get one-on-one time with all of your primary stakeholders, all the people that could be a part of optimization in some way. Actually sit down with them and just talk to them for like an hour about, hey, what are the problems that you're facing? What's going on in your world on the day-to-day? Because what I can guarantee is that very few people from marketing have ever cared what their specific problems are. Yeah. And it's not just marketing. It could be something like, even something like legal, for example. There are A/B tests that we can do, or even something like user research that you can do very easily, that can help people in departments that that have no connection to marketing at all, but it would still improve the business.
Yeah, the way I like to tell the optimizers that I work with is essentially look at, do an impact map, right? Draw an impact map on how each stakeholder is impacted by your work, because ultimately what you don't want them doing is, as you said, legal, for example, right? Legal can pretty much come down heavy on you if you design the wrong test, even if one word is wrong. But let's preempt that. Let's get them on our side, from day one.
Yeah.
Show them what you're doing and make a note of what they may object to, so you're not falling afoul of their practices and causing more work for them, because that's when you start losing their trust. And I think once trust goes, then you've lost, basically. It seems to be like it can be done, but I feel like optimizers are focused on the technical aspects too soon in an organization. I keep going back to that word change management, because it seems like optimization as a practice should involve change management from the start. You're essentially persuading and trying to, excuse the pun here, convert people to your way of doing things, right?
Hey, it works.
Yeah. So, you need to make sure that you're giving them the feedback in line with what they expect to see in their day-to-day lives and what is going to impact them ultimately. Let's talk about teams, right? Again, there's that whole issue of like, okay, we've got specialists, we've got generalists. How do you see that structures evolving this year?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that right now, and this might be an interesting point, so we might disagree here, but from what I've seen on the in-house side, I've seen that people are not focusing as much on generalists as they should.
Okay.
Because a lot of the hiring that I've seen going on for optimization teams, experimentation teams, testing teams, is they're usually starting with the technical people. So they're starting with the developers. They're starting with the statisticians or the data scientists in some cases. And that's great. Like you need those people. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And a lot of it depends on how you're, if you've already have a structure or not, what works for you, like the type of testing system, is it centralized, decentralized, all that stuff. But my personal opinion is that you need somebody to run the show in general. You need somebody who has experience in all areas to be able to sort of look at the landscape and say, this is what we want to focus on for these reasons. This is what we don't want to focus on for these reasons. A data scientist, unless they have experience in those creative areas, and that goes back to what we were saying before, that delineation. Yeah. A data scientist is as incredibly intelligent as they are, lacks about 50% of what you need to manage an entire optimization program. They have an extreme amount of the technical side. Oftentimes they're, and the analytical side, oftentimes they're missing some of the, in fact, there's a great quote by a guy named George Box. He's a statistician. And I'm basically paraphrasing here, but what he says is that statistics, they make your experiments better. If you have an experiment and you don't have statistics, then you do risk messing up your experiment. But if you don't have the knowledge of running the experiment in the first place, the statistics are meaningless. They do nothing. So what I would like for people to get to is start their program by building around that generalist and then add in all the specialists when you see the need for them.
I actually agree with you over there. So I don't know where the disagreement came from. I agree that we start with the generalist first, because you want the orchestrator, right? So as that person, the way I see it is that person's going to progress further down the line into the role of a manager that'll orchestrate the entire process. You can't orchestrate the entire process if you don't know what the process involves. And if you're a full stack optimizer, another word for a generalist, someone who does basically everything, the analysis, the build and the deploy and all that kind of stuff, you know the process inside out. And you know where your gaps are. So you start hitting velocity of the bottlenecks in your testing. Maybe you can't deploy enough tests because you don't have enough time. Then you know who the next hire needs to be. Maybe that's a front-end developer because you're stuck. So yeah, you're right. I think the rush to hire this A team prematurely does more harm than good.
And you know what a big problem is? I think? I don't think there's that many good generalists out there.
Why is that the case though? Is it because everyone's jumping to be a specialist, or why?
Yeah, I think that's why. I think that, so when you think about if someone's making the transition to optimization, and you think about where would they be before they sort of come in, If you're a developer, then that's easy. Then you're a developer. If you're like a data scientist, well, that's also easy. You're just whatever that role is. If you're a UX designer, well, then you're a designer, and so on and so forth. So where does the manager that understands all of these aspects really come from? The answer, I think, is they're self-taught. I think a lot of these people, they start off in one discipline, and because they love the industry, because they're really interested in learning all aspects of it, they teach themselves, these are the aspects of psychology I need. These are the aspects of statistics I need. These are the aspects of UX or development or whatever. And those people are just not common, that are willing to go out on limbs that they've never been out before so that they can combine the knowledge.
Oh, there's a soundbite for this this show then. A full stack CRO or a CRO generalist is actually a rare breed. Maybe we put this out there, right? I mean, we could be proven wrong. Maybe there's loads of them that raise their hand and say, no, we're a CRO. We can be proven wrong.
It's possible.
But that's an interesting thing you say, that CRO generalists, I wonder if they come from a consultative background and then, like yourself, right? You mentioned you came from a consulting background, and were you doing everything in that role, or what was your position there?
I was doing everything, but interestingly enough, that was something that I did by choice.
Right.
I volunteered for that. Most people who were in the type of role that I was only did one aspect of it.
All right.
Or they did one aspect and they pass it off to somebody else. Yeah.
So it does need to be a motivated person. Again, this analogy of an orchestrator, right? An orchestra person who conducts a conductor, right? That's the word. Understanding each and every element, how it plays this big, in this CRO program. And I wonder, whether we need to have training that upskills people in these different areas, and almost makes them want to do all of this, or is it too much work for them? We never know. Maybe this is a question that we want to ask the viewers out there. Like, are you a generalist? Are you a specialist? Did you ever want to be a generalist, or were you always aiming to be a specialist?
Mm-hmm.
Let us know in the comments somewhere. This is the first show, so I don't know where the comments are. I don't know.
Up here, down,
yeah, somewhere. We'll figure this out as we go along. So I think we're playing around with the format, right? We'll see what happens. We may need like a musical interlude or something.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe some like a hard rock that comes in intermittently every 30 seconds or so, just to liven things up.
Definitely. Or we could invite Tim Stewart, who would be here for for an hour, just him talking.
Oh yeah,
just him talking.
one. Hey Tim, how are you today? 2 hours later.
Yeah, 2 hours later, right? Yeah.
All right, now let's start the podcast.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. We should tell him that we name dropped him in the show. He needs to come on now.
Yeah, he does.
But I think this is a good first show, right? We wanted to get a finger on the pulse of the industry, just get a little bit of understanding. And this is the first show we're doing together. Let's see how this goes, right? And we're going to be here I think every week at least for the foreseeable future, maybe. I think. Sure. See how it goes. Right, and bring on some guests. So if you want to join us, you can also email us and on info@effectiveexperiments.com. Email me, and you can be a guest on the show. If you have questions that you want answered, we can have a Q&A section. If you want to write in, email info@effectiveexperiments with your questions for this show. And again, as I say, I don't know the format just yet. We're playing around with it. This is going to be something we do every week, and we may change it around depending on feedback, depending on heat maps. I don't know. We'll see. Right. So thanks for listening, Chad. Pleasure having you on the show. I look forward to many more sessions with you, picking your brains on more deeper topics on conversion optimization and our industry as a whole. Thanks.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.